Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my ambasinistrous co-host, Chris Rasick. You know, we've put out a total of 78 or maybe 79 podcast episodes. We've even held a few back that we didn't think were deserving of your time. But over the weekend, I scoured through 10 of our most popular episodes. That was 278 pages of transcripts. And we pulled out the 17 best tips, strategies, and pieces of advice from our guests. And there might be one or two that, came from us as well. We thought that we'd share them with you today in no particular order, just a list of things that you can use to help grow your business as an Amazon seller. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. We spend minutes preparing for each one of these episodes. So if you get some value, do us a solid, pound the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. That way we know what you like, what you don't like, and we can bring you more of that. And of course, we'll keep showing up and bringing you more content to help you. So let's dive in. We've got quite a list here today. And I figured we'd start with, I don't know, maybe it might be the number one question or the number one problem is I cannot find profitable products to sell. So what better than to talk about how to find winning products fast? So here's my opinion. The number one rule of arbitrage is the more products that you see or the more scans that you do, the more money you're going to make. So, and why is this? Well, you're going to have like a set hit rate. You know, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 3%. We should probably do some math. Like all the data is out there, at least for our own sourcing. And we could probably extrapolate, okay, well, here's the average. And so you get people who say, well, I have not found anything profitable. And then you hear, I've scanned 100 products. Well, if the hit rate is 1%, you're going to be lucky to get one, because you got to remember that even though that 1% is an average, there are going to be some times where you scan 100 products and you strike out. And maybe the next 100 products you strike out as well. But on the 1,000 to 1,100, you get like 10 in a row. It's just the way it works. So if you think you're scanning enough or looking at enough products, you're probably not. And now I don't like the whole hustle culture mentality, but I mean, the way to fix this is go 5 times harder. Whether that is using software that can help you automate to get through things a little bit faster, whether that is spending more time behind the keyboard, whatever it is. Now, the other thing is that I am a big fan of reverse sourcing, but if you want to increase your hit rate, don't necessarily look for the random deals. Know retailer trends or figure out retailer trends. So I happen to be pretty handy with Walgreens. I have not looked today, but I can tell you that they very likely have some sort of sale going on today, whether it's a buy one, get one free or a buy one, get one 50% off. And then I know that there is another 20% off coupon code that's available for another 10 days on top of that. Every store has these cycles. They've got sales cycles. They've got clearance cycles. Matter of fact, you can just Google Target clearance cycle, and you're going to see Facebook mom groups and websites dedicated to reporting on the sales cycle and the clearance cycle of places like Target, places like Walmart. and so on. Now, the other thing is start looking for some exclusive brands or other ways that you can get discounts. Make sure that you're always Googling for coupon codes, for discount codes, for promo codes. You might think, oh, well, I should just use that one term, coupon code. No, you may need to Google all three of them to find everything that you're looking for. And don't just stop at page 1 of Google, go into page 2 and page 3. And then finally, make sure that you're looking at the data. Okay. It's very easy to find a product that looks really promising right now, but maybe it is inflated in price for one reason or another. Maybe it's a seasonal product, which is okay. It's not a bad thing to take advantage of seasonal products, but there's all kinds of things that you need to understand before pulling the trigger on a product that you're going to sell on Amazon.
Yeah, this is the type of thing where, your product mix, you want to be wide. Your sourcing reps, you need to be deep.
Oh, that's good.
Chances are
that's really good.
If you're listening to this, if you're really paying attention to this part of it, chances are you're not searching enough potential products. That's going to be true for the majority of the listeners right now. It's funny. I was just watching Gary Vaynerchuk just popped back into the algorithm decided that it was time to show him to me again. And he was at some sort of trade show or something like that. And he's talking to this person across the table. They're both standing there. And the guy said, I can't get anyone to respond to me on LinkedIn. And so Vaynerchuk said, well, how many messages have you sent out? And the guy goes, a lot. He goes, how many? And the guy says, a ton. And Vaynerchuk goes, no, tell me a number. He goes, one after another after another. He goes, listen, man. He goes, give me an actual number. And the guy says, like 25. And Vaynerchuk laughed at him, and he said 25. He goes, you need to be doing 100 a day, and it's, that's kind of the same situation transported into a different setting, and that's how I picture the conversation if we would have them with new sellers who say, I scanned the entire site. I've been looking for 45 minutes and I haven't found anything, like that's not deep enough, and this is another good example where you'll benefit from the lessons from people just a few steps ahead of you, right? Because we say, especially when you're new, you're going to be gated in a lot of stuff. So that's going to make your hit ratio go even lower than what we see. Now, the bright side is once you get out of the sandbox and Amazon says, okay, this store is a legitimate store, let's open them up a little bit. Sourcing gets a whole lot easier because you're already used to how many reps you had to go through to find winning products. However, if you saw our last podcast episode with Chris Beam, she's not a fan of reverse sourcing, but reverse sourcing is key for new sellers because you're sourcing the Amazon catalog of products that at one point in time were able to be obtained profitably. Now you may have missed a sale, you may have an expired code that is no longer valid and it may not be good because of that, but already that to some degree a seasoned seller found it profitably and added it to their catalog. So that's a degree of proof that you need that you're on the right track, and these are the types of products you need to be looking for. So that's why reverse sourcing is valuable. So if you're taking your keys off of $1 million sellers, well, their strategies are going to change a little bit because they're looking for volume now. They need to up the quantities. You're just trying to get some winning products into your catalog, make some profit, and start scaling up, getting your reps in, get out of the sandbox. So, be careful who you watch, because some of the tactics of more seasoned sellers aren't going to apply to you if you're fairly new or struggling.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
This one, you may know by now, that I despise the word replen. And I won't go into the full diatribe of why I despise that name. It's a great concept, though. Don't get me wrong. But let's talk about them. Let's talk about the real replens. Replens aren't just the stuff that people buy all the time, right? Um, a better definition of an actual replen that we're going to have access to would be like a seasonal product. Think pumpkin spice in the fall. Think Easter candy around this time of year when this is coming out. Think back to school. Backpacks and all the school supplies. Those are the replens. There's a seasonality to them. Those kind of fit the definition a little better. So what you want to do is you want to track, test, and hoard, right? The best sellers, the sellers that we're all aiming to be like, they don't just reorder stuff. They track these sales cycles, and they mine their data. They farm through their own database because it's incredibly valuable. Because once those discounts hit, you can tap into your database, and you've got a wealth of leads right there. When in doubt, stockpile. Stockpile your data, stockpile your inventory when the discounts come. When all the factors align to where the stuff is profitable. If you know what sells, you can buy deep enough so that when prices dip, you can hold off because you have the supply, and then you're laughing all the way to the bank once you send the stuff in after that dip starts to recover.
This is not my preferred method of selling, but there are some guys who are incredibly good at this, and they'll source places that everyone says, oh well, everything from their tanks, like everything is everything goes to zero, goes to no profit. And these guys are like, yeah, because you don't know how to read a Keepa chart. And I see a couple of guys who post this on a regular basis, and then they'll post, hey, here's where I sold right after all of you clowns sold out. And yeah, maybe I waited 45 or 90 days, but I bought while it was cheap and I sold while it was high. And sure, your cash on cash cycle is a little bit longer, but when you go and you're making a 40-50% ROI and your cash flow can handle that, that's not a bad way to do business.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you want to be wary of your cash flow. That's the thing. Buy and hold is it's going to tie up your capital. So, you need to kind of deploy it strategically depending on your situation. But another timely thing right now is it's probably getting ready to be pool season, right? There's some really impressive stories of people selling pool supplies. It was a little bit magnified over lockdowns in 2020 and 21. But think along those lines when you think of replens. The marketing term that you'll see thrown around more often is essentially just farming your own database for the information and buying stuff that you've already bought before. But that's mostly to sell you courses. But I said I wasn't going to go into the diatribe, so I'll stop there.
So this next thing is something that Chris coined, and it's called the pinch, and it's one of those things you want to avoid in a Keepa graph. I don't know what it is, but I love looking at Keepa graphs. You can tell a lot about what may be about to happen just based on what you're looking at. And the pinch specifically talks about when the number of sellers spikes and there is not there's not an increase in the demand of the product at the same time. And so the price, of course, has to come down. It's just each one of the ASINs on Amazon works like its own little economy, and economics 101, of supply and demand basically run exactly what's going to happen with a product. So you want to try to avoid these, and a lot of people will get in them and they'll It'll be like, oh, well, it went from 10 sellers to 30 sellers over the past week, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hop on as well. When you know that there's probably a few more sellers coming on, and that's when prices start to drop and it becomes a race to the bottom very, very quickly. The inverse of that is looking for stable listings that are on Amazon. I know that it's a dynamic marketplace, so there's always going to be some fluctuation in prices. There always going to be some fluctuation in seller count. We actually want to see those things. It's what keeps the marketplace healthy. But there are a surprising number of listings that don't go from 5 sellers to 50 sellers back down to 10 sellers over time. They're a little bit harder to find, but Keepa makes it really pretty easy these days. And then it's just going out and sourcing those products, whether it's manually sourcing via Google, uploading those into something like Tactical Arbitrage, finding the storefronts that are on those types of listings and reverse sourcing those. Like, there's a bunch of different methods just off of those products that are nice and stable.
Yeah, this is one where a little bit of knowledge on your fellow sellers, this is kind of a subtle benefit to networking, aside from the obvious. There's a very, very long list of the benefits of networking, like we've talked about if you watch the show. However, and I'll give you an example here. When we had our mastermind running, we had one person who had a much more aggressive timeline than I think most of us, than the majority of it, or the rest of us. She would, like, we're taping this in the first half of March, and I'm not sure exactly when Easter falls this year, nor does it matter for the purpose of this example. However, she would be of the opinion that Easter's done. She needs to be moving on from Easter. That opportunity has passed, and she'd be looking towards, I don't know, whatever's next, like Father's Day or graduation day. That's how far in advance that she projected. And I used to make fun of her, I'd, like, around this time I'd say, it's time to get your Christmas gifts in, and stuff, just because she projected so much further out than I did. And why is that a good example with things like the pinch? Is because you need to realize that there are different sellers with different timelines. Now, if she thinks Easter is done, she may be repricing more aggressively, right? She may be moving towards a liquidation strategy when you're still loading inventory in. You're still packing boxes with Easter stuff. So if she's moved to a more aggressive pricing model, logic tells you that those prices are going to drop even further. Now she's a successful seller. I've kept up with her, since even since we stopped meeting on a regular basis with the mastermind. She's doing some big numbers now, so it's worked for her. So you need to know kind of like the behaviors of other people. It may be simply that somebody's on a different timeline and they want to get out of stuff while you still think it's prime time for that particular season. That could be causing the pinch. So knowing a little bit about the mentality, or just allowing for different philosophies for different sellers. Like we've talked about, anytime the price tanking comes up, I like to make little jokes about, young kids with their plum payment, looming over their head, and they got to just blow the stuff out at whatever it sells for, whether that be 0% ROI or what, because they need to make their payment. Other sellers may have a more stable cash flow infrastructure, and they don't need to do something like that. But the problem is, lowest price is typically going to dictate the pinch. So, we talk a lot about scaling, over the course of our episode catalog, because it's such a great topic to talk about, because there's no matching stories. Everyone kind of has their own their own process and their own methods of how they got to where they are and where they plan to go. But let's talk about scaling. Some of the highlights of the conversations that we've had in terms of scaling, particularly with just a one-person show. I think that's important, because I think we kind of underestimate the ability, the volume that we can do as a one-person show.
Mm-hmm.
I think some sellers are a little too quick, to think they need to bring on help, and I fear that they're trying to get the help as a solution for something they're not strong in. So, but the first key of scaling as a one-person operation is going to be automation. Leveraging it to the fullest degree that you possibly can. And I'm talking prep centers. I'm talking tools like SellerAmp and RevSeller. I'm talking about Keepa alerts, to let you know when pricing milestones are achieved. It's all about automation is all about saving your own time so that you can put that time towards higher value activities. You need to have a certain degree of a sharp focus on your activities, and specifically focus on the things that are moving the needle, so to speak. Sourcing is money. There's a reason we asked, one of the social media groups, a question was asked, what was the some of the best advice that you received, from your fellow sellers or your network, or along your journey, one way or another. And I don't know if it was a bit of brown nosing, but somebody said, always be sourcing, which is that logo or that saying is emblazoned on everything that I put out, from a marketing perspective and from my business. That's where the money comes from, sourcing, your time spent sourcing. There's a direct like there's a ratio. You can actually calculate how much projected profit you made on your time. That's one of the things that the lines aren't blurred. It's a very clear, bright line as far as what the revenue that you're generating from the activity. Everything else, if you're letting something take away from your sourcing time, it's a good idea to look at outsourcing it at that point, right? And another key as a one-person operation trying to scale, don't cash out too early. Number one way to fail would be taking profits too soon, because the profits that you take and put in your pocket are those are reinvestment dollars that could have been going towards growth.
Saul had a really good Twitter post on taking profits too early yesterday. It's early March 2025. For when you're watching the show, you want to go check out a post from Saul Sells Stuff, and he kind of broke down the math. And someone grew to $1 million and they were taking out 200,000 that they can actually keep for themselves, but they want to grow that business a little bit further. Could you reinvest half of that? Could you reinvest 75% of it? Like how long are you willing to eat ramen noodles? Is, if you look at Silicon Valley, that's what they all talk about while they're trying to scale up. We ate ramen noodles for the first year, for the first 2 years. And it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. How much can you leave in the business? And gets a little bit harder, with the more responsibilities you have, which is why I'm a little jealous of, some of the younger folks who are in the Amazon space. Fewer responsibilities, no mouths to feed, that kind of thing. And you can reinvest heavily and grow incredibly quickly. Now, outside of just reinvesting, there are other ways to help you scale up a little bit faster. And honestly, this is one of those rules that everyone, I think, should learn more than any other rule or razor or mental model or anything like that. And it's the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is literally everywhere. 80% of your results are almost always going to come from 20% of your efforts. This is in business. This is in relationships. It's in, I mean, it's in your health and your diet. Like it's in all of these things. And so most of your profits are probably going to come from 20% of your buys. And if you can find out what those winners are and kind of reverse engineer, well, this is where 80% of my profits are coming from. It's coming from these 20% of ASINs or these 20% type of products that I'm sourcing, then it's time to start looking for more of those rather than being as scattershot as you possibly can. Be a little bit more intentional. If you're doing retail arbitrage and you know that you know 95% of the time are not finding anything profitable in, let's say, the grocery section, but 70% of the time you're finding profitable items in sporting goods. Well, where are you going to spend the bulk of your time as you go through new stores? Spend your time in the places that are doing the bulk of the work for you. And then, now the only way you can figure this out is to track your data. You need to be tracking everything, and you don't need to have some incredibly complex system. Just put things on a Google sheet. Make sure you're using an app of some sort that tracks the history of what you're looking through, so you can go back through it later on down the road. Set up those Keepa alerts, like we've talked about. Can you imagine if someone actually maxed out? And I know maybe 1 to 3 people who have actually done this, but imagine setting Keepa alerts on all 5,000 ASINs that you can put into your Keepa alert system. Like, there would be no reason that you wouldn't get 2, 3, 5, 10 alerts per day, whether that's something that's ready to be flipped from Amazon to Amazon, or whether that's something that is, back up to the price where you want to source it at again. Make sure you're doing those things. It really is going to push your business forward.
Yeah, and it can't be overemphasized how important your own database is. Just even a simple Google sheet. We talked about it on one of the live shows. I sourced minimum 500 units of inventory simply because I found a coupon code for a category of a store that I was familiar with, and I simply went back through my old leads, and everything that I had looked at. It's, imagine a scenario, if anyone's out there, frustrated as a new seller that you can't find anything. If you stay at it, imagine a scenario where you find a store that has a site-wide coupon code. Say they take 20% off of everything store-wide, and you've been diligent in tracking everything that you look at. Think of how many of those leads that you passed on because they were only 10% ROI. But now if you took 20% off of the buy cost, it's now in a range that is perfectly acceptable, and can actually be bought and can be sent in. And you can just repeat that over and over and over again. The value of tracking your data is the fact that your database will grow in time. And the more it grows, the more valuable it is. You mentioned Keepa alerts. It's having that, using that is I get jealous over the people that have a ton of Keepa alerts out there, because there are certain days where you just don't know where to look, but to have that in your back pocket and just get emails from Keepa saying, hey, by the way, this is in the range, this is in the target spot that you set, and you could buy it and flip it. Having A to A in your back pocket is it'll keep the what do they call that? It's kind of a slump buster. It'll keep you from the dry spells. And speaking of alternative sourcing methods, I also, next I want to talk about alternative marketplaces. and this isn't going to go where you think it's going to go with all you Walmart people. I'm not going that direction. Talking more about your bad buys. Say you're stuck with a bunch of bad buys. I'm in the midst. I am in the middle. I'm knee deep into a very concentrated, aggressive period of liquidating my death pile. It as much as I say it, sometimes it takes something else to actually get the words to sink in, and it just dawned on me that I have so much capital that is worthless right now as long as it sits in that death pile, and it's to the point where it doesn't matter what it sells for. I just want to get that capital back. So if you're in that situation like I am, you're stuck with bad buys, you're stuck with returns or whatever it may be, things you had to pull back from Amazon. You need to be selling them somewhere else. You need to have at least one outlet, preferably a couple outlets, to where you can sell other stuff. And of course the most popular is probably going to be eBay. But also Whatnot is out there. Mercari is another popular one. You need to turn that dead inventory into cash, because it's true. It's $0 right now. So literally anything you get from there, from that, you can turn it zero into something, any positive number, you can turn that into good inventory and help the bottom line. Bundle stuff up. There's plenty of times where I bought, a couple dozen of something and turned out it wasn't going to work out sending it into Amazon. You can bundle those up. You can pair them. You can make a 3-pack, make a 5-pack or whatever, or pair some products up. If you have a shampoo and a conditioner, you can put those together and make it a bundle. That's popular. You're creating value where none existed before, and it may provide some uniqueness on whatever marketplace that say it's eBay or something like that. It may create a unique product combination, and if that hits, you kind of own that market until anybody else sees what you're doing. And don't play favorites on a platform. The frustrations and the emergence of everyone talking about Walmart now, and everyone, not everyone, it makes it sound like there's this mass exodus over to Walmart, and that's not necessarily true, but we're not going to get into that part of it. But what the lesson is, the wisdom to take from this prevailing sentiment that we see on social media is the value of diversification, right? The good sellers really don't care where the money's coming from. They don't care if it's Amazon paying them or whether it's eBay paying them or whether it's Whatnot paying them. The sellers, we are in business to sell products, so you really shouldn't care where it's coming from. Just keep it moving wherever you need to offload it.
Yeah. This is another thing I think people need to understand is the sunk cost fallacy. As soon as you buy the product, it is a sunk cost. And then we talk about death piles, we complain about death piles, but there's so much capital oftentimes, that, and sure, maybe it doesn't feel good getting 10 cents back on the dollar, but it is better than something. And I wonder what the mental block is there. I know that humans are averse to loss, and maybe it makes us, kind of relive the loss when we only get 10 cents back on the dollar. But I mean, that can be a significant amount of money that can be spent on good inventory.
Yeah.
All right,
I think it's probably like a factor of, you're only hearing the positives on social media, if you're following sellers and whatnot, so there's kind of that false narrative kind of seeps in based on, what the content that you're taking in. So, and I think it's too easy to take it personal. I think it's easy to kick yourself over a bad buy because the successful sellers that you're trying to emulate don't seem to have those, and they do. They just don't post them on social media. But I think in
Right.
our subconscious, it's it's tough to reason that out in the moment.
Yeah. So let's talk about using lead lists, because popular opinion, or at least what people spout off on social media, is that you should never use a lead list. They're absolutely worthless and a waste of your time. And uh, I think we here go the exact opposite direction. They are incredibly useful, and for a couple of reasons. Not just because Chris has a lead list, but they help you find patterns. It's not just about finding the product. Yes, could you buy directly off a lead list? Sure, absolutely. Should you expect some sort of price erosion if you buy directly off of a lead list? Yeah. But if you go in and you say, okay, well, let's break down why this showed up on a lead list. What makes it a good product? What makes it a winning product? Now, how can I go and replicate that? And on top of that, well, what storefronts are on here that were here first that I could go and I could learn from them? And if it's, let's say it's a hair product, we'll say a mousse. Well, what other types of these types of products are there? Is there volumizing mousse? Is there mousse like dry shampoo type of stuff? Yes to all of these things. So why not start going down these rabbit holes? Now, the other thing about lead lists is that they're not all created equal. So while I would say that you should trust, you also need to verify. Make sure that the data that they're sharing fits with what you're seeing. Make sure that the products that they're sharing fits with what you're looking to source. Always, always check Keepa. It is, if there was a gospel for Amazon sellers, it would be Keepa. And then there's another way outside of lead lists where you can find leads. And this is going to go back to networking again. If you can build a group of 3 to 5 people that are willing to share sourcing strategies, share leads with each other, maybe someone is out of sourcing capital for this week, but that doesn't mean you stop sourcing. You keep sourcing, you find products that are good, and you're willing to share them among 3 or 5 other sellers. There is nothing wrong with that. And it can help you figure out, hey, how is this person sourcing compared to how I'm sourcing? And they can do the same with you and make a little bit of money along the way.
Yeah. See above where we talked about reverse sourcing, and how it's especially important for newer sellers. Lead lists are essentially curated reverse sourcing. That's essentially what it is. They're taking, obviously they're showing you products on the Amazon catalog, and then they're also taking it a step further and showing you where you can buy it profitably. But similar to if you had your own process for reverse sourcing and you were going through and you see these products and you're trying to find them, if you found a profitable product, say it's a shampoo or something like that, say you found a coupon code, you don't just immediately move on to the next one. You have a coupon code, you're naturally going to think, what other products does this coupon code discount? And you're going to see if, and then you're going to go and you're going to see if those are on the Amazon catalog and if those are profitable as well. And you're going to proliferate the leads that you do have into multiple leads. Same concept applies with lead lists. It's just curated reverse sourcing, and that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
If once you have the right mindset, of course. So yeah, I am biased. I almost said might be, but I am biased. But lead lists are a very valuable tool when done
Mm-hmm.
right. So
I agree.
So we're going to move into health, specifically account health, but the preservation of your business in general. But I want to talk about some of the methods that we've come across on how to handle IP complaints. First and foremost, most important would be to know the lay of the land. You need to know what brands are on the blacklist, so to speak. The best. I'm sure my co-host would agree. The best tool that you could possibly use right now is IP Alert. Because if a brand is being aggressive, you don't want to touch it. And IP Alert will pop up right in the middle of your screen as you're sourcing. Be wary of the IP tools that you use. There's just like we said with lead list, the quality will vary. I have no qualms. Even before I started the podcast, I was a fan of IP Alert because of the way Chris maintains it. The standards that he has in place for something to hit and become an IP alert, to have a flag, and then the fact that he takes it off after the fact. I've seen other IP mechanisms. My classic example was the one that popped up on Lego. It said Lego is an IP risk, and I looked over and I saw 250 sellers currently in stock on the very popular Lego product. So pretty safe to say that was a false positive. So yeah. So know what tool. I mean, once you pick a tool, preferably you'll pick IP Alert. Make sure you stay away from the true positives, the accurate ones. So as far as like specific IP complaints, you're eventually going to get one. And when you do, speed matters. You certainly don't want to put off your response. You don't want to delay, because that could ultimately hurt your account, potentially fatally, if you're really lackadaisical about it. Reply fast, send your invoices, and essentially act like a professional seller, because that's exactly what you are. You want to, now I say send invoices, right? So the key to that, let's dive into that a little bit. Make sure you keep your records. Think of it like a law firm, it would document their invoices and all the materials related to the buy. You want every invoice. You want every order confirmation, shipping confirmation, delivery confirmation. Find out if your prep center keeps packing slips. You want everything, every approval. Keep it in a file, right? Because when it comes to it, Amazon takes this seriously. We may laugh and we may be flippant about getting something on our account health and counterfeit without a test buy, blah blah blah. And we may be kind of casual when we're talking about it, but as far as Amazon's attitude, they have to take it seriously, right? They have relationships with the brands and the sellers. They're neutral. But the obligation, the number one thing is their customers. And in terms of IP complaints and authenticity issues, Amazon has to make sure that they're legitimate products sold on their catalog. So, don't, as far as Amazon's concerned, don't be casual with it as far as providing what you need to provide.
Yeah. I think that is one of the biggest things, is I think people want to take it seriously, but they don't necessarily always respond like a professional. Let's not just willy-nilly send a bunch of paperwork at Amazon. Let's mark it up. Let's point out exactly what people should be looking for. Like, let's send in a brief like you were going to send it into a lawyer. And I think you'll end up seeing a much better hit rate if you do that. And yes, we know that there are there problems at Amazon when it comes to accepting invoices. Yes, we won't sugarcoat that. But on the other hand, our only job is how can we respond as professionally and as well as we possibly can. let's talk a little bit about cash flow, because it is the thing that everyone worries about, talks about, thinks about. Cash flow is king, if I could use another trite expression. Um, yeah, how do you manage it? Number one, well, if you go back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, try to use other people's money as much as possible and as safely as possible. So, what I mean by this is, one, use credit cards. That way, you can get a bit of a loan, a free loan. Matter of fact, Chris Beam touched on it really nicely in our last podcast about how she's essentially got a 60-day float due to the way that she stacks her credit cards. But on top of that, make sure that you're stacking your cash back or your travel rewards, or any other ways that you can stack a little extra cash. Do it. Okay. Uh, Focus on inventory turnover. That way you can get your cash on cash cycle as short as possible. We've talked a lot about, money loves speed, and how you can actually take a lower ROI on products that move a little bit faster, and it will actually beat a higher ROI. If things are taking 6 months to sell, there better be a really good reason for it. You've got an actual plan. You don't want things just sitting there for 6 months at a time. And then do everything you can to get your money as fast as possible back into your pocket. Not everyone has the ability, but if you do have the ability, taking daily payouts can be incredibly helpful. It's something that we do in our own business. We try to take payouts almost daily. You don't necessarily want to, leave your money tied up at Amazon for as long as possible. Give them a free loan, because you know that money's sitting in an account making 2 or 3% for them. Might as well be back in your pocket, paying your credit card or buying more inventory, or whatever that is. And then finally, you're going to want to go and learn. Go read a book or two about cash flow. Go read Small Time Operator. Go read, there's plenty of books on how to manage cash flow, and follow some good accounts on social media about it. It's probably their social media handles are probably going to end in CPA. A lot of the content's probably going to be fairly dry, but there are going to be some really good pieces of advice that you can grab from certain people on social media. Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold, as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages, so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and figure out, if you don't know it already, figure out the difference between cash flow and profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's picture it kind of like if last time you're on a beach, picture it like carrying sand from closer to the ocean back to a point further up the shore, further up the beach. It's going to start leaking through your fingers a little bit, right? So that's where speed comes in. You want to bring as much sand as possible, and the more you delay, the less sand you're actually going to deliver when you get to the destination. It just, money just sitting there isn't necessarily a good thing. You need to make sure it's in the place where it needs to be, where it's working for you, and reducing expenses and interest or whatever you may have going on. This time of year is really there's a lot of cash flow tips floating out on social media this time of year, because the CPAs are talking about it. It's, a lot of people are doing their taxes and whatnot. So there's a lot of valuable information out there. It's definitely worth your time. So, I personally, very satisfied that tactical arbitrage is having a renaissance right now. I've always been a fan to differing degrees. I've admitted I was mad at them at one period of time, but I never stopped using it. I never stopped realizing how valuable it is. Um, and I don't. It's not a zero-sum game, so I'm not upset about the fact that a bunch of people are coming back to tactical arbitrage, because it's going to lead to more conversations in the network and social media. As people need refreshed, and as people kind of explore, there's going to be there's going to be some skill refinement kind of in public. So I am looking forward to that. However, tactical arbitrage is only going to be as good as the user. Um, that cliche, garbage in, garbage out. Um, cliches only become cliches because so many people say it over and over again. And the reason they say it over and over again is because it's freaking true. If you're using TA wrong, or you have unrealistic expectations of this software, it's not going to find gold, and you'll be disappointed because you've set too big of expectations. Filters matter. Lack of filters matter. You can set you have the freedom to adjust in you can customize it however you want to. There's a lot of freedom there, but be careful with that. I set very low ROI. I'm basically just keeping the negatives out is how I've preferred to use it. But you can set an ROI however you want. Set it wherever you want it to be, whatever minimum that you're looking for. You can limit sales rank, and you can exclude oversized products, especially because shipping costs are it's a bristly topic these days as far as shipping costs. So you may want to remove oversized products. There are all sorts of these filters. So get in there, see what they do. Word of caution: don't over filter. Kind of a best practice that we've talked about is have the filters fairly wide open, and then filter after the scan is done. Kind of filter the actual results once they're done. You don't want to miss products because you filtered your filters are too tight on the front end.
Yeah.
So you want to test small but scale big, right? One of the biggest mistakes with tactical arbitrage is going deep before proving that the product works. And this is true across your entire catalog. And it, TA is no exclusion as far as this is concerned. So, but overall, tactical arbitrage, it is one of my favorite tools, always has been.
I think tactical arbitrage is making one big mistake, because we hear a lot of the same complaints. Well, I see some mismatches, but what you never hear people say is, "Oh wow, I put in 8,000 ASINs for tactical arbitrage to go and check for me. It actually checked 16,000 products, because for each one of those ASINs, it goes out and maybe checks one store or 7 stores or 25 stores. And then at the end of the day, it gave me back 662 products. And maybe you're using very minimal filters. All right. Maybe it's a 1% ROI and a 10% profit, because you're going to try to look for additional coupon codes, additional discount gift cards, and things like that. So you want to see a little bit more. So, but now instead of having to go through 11,000 products, you now only have to go through a list of 600. And maybe your hit rate on those 600 is 10%, but you get to quickly go through those by looking at a history chart really quickly. And if the history chart doesn't look good, then I can skip right past it. And if I can see that the images don't match for one reason or another, I can skip right past that as well. And so I don't know, maybe they need to make more of a point about, hey, you gave us this data. we sifted through all of this junk so you don't have to. And now you've just got this nice little tight list right here. And all those numbers are actually, I'm looking at a current scan that's running in my own account. It's been running for about 24 hours, and those numbers are directly from a scan that I'm running. And I'm excited. I'll be able to go through those 600 products, I'm guessing in an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and pull out the ones that are going to be winners and then go on to the next set of data. It's all about making you more efficient, more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about hit ratios, we talked about it at the top of the show. TA, it's not going to be 100%. People have some unrealistic expectations. Mismatches are going to occur. And in my mind, the only thing that the one thing to think about that settled any kind of grudge that I had on the mismatches was how many listings I look at that are absolutely terrible. Just think about how many UPCs are wrong. And because that's one of the first places I go. That's towards the top of the list when I'm trying to match products up that there may be a little bit of question. I'll look at the UPCs, and I'm not saying sometimes it's the manufacturer. They will change over time. They'll change a UPC. Other times, you got to remember how easy it is to create a listing. These are sellers making these listings.
Yep.
And they put some really weird stuff in the listings. I mean, we've seen some really bad listings. So what is a computer program to do? It can't reason out what the person who made the listing meant or what they might have meant. They can only look at the data, compare it, and whatever the settings are, they determine whether it's a match or not. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be thrown off. It's very easy to see in my mind. When I consider some of these listings that I come across, like there's garbage in and garbage out as far as making listings too. So
Yeah. There's a couple of things I like to think of. Number one, if I'm driving my wife's Tesla, which uses computer vision, and it sees a traffic cone and it shows me a person on the screen. Well, if I can't expect Tesla to get it right 100% of the time, which has some of the most advanced computer vision in the world, why would I expect tactical arbitrage, which costs me $69 a month, to be able to get it right 100% of the time?
Right.
But then on top of that, um, there are just, I don't know. It's like you said, some of those listings are horrible. And I'll give you an example. We bought a product not too long ago that we knew was right. And, it was seen by two people. Oh, yeah, that looks great. And then the product actually shows up at the prep center, and the people at the prep center are questioning, not sure this is the right product, even though they've got the product in hand and they're looking at the images online and they send us pictures of the product. Are you sure? Like, can you take a double look at this? And yeah, it absolutely is. Were the pictures the greatest? No. Was the title the best? No, absolutely not. But it was the right product. And you cannot, if it confuses people, why would it not confuse a computer?
Exactly.
All right. Let's talk about the biggest mistake that new sellers make. This could probably be a list, but there's one in particular I want to focus on because I think I've seen more sellers go out of business due to this than maybe anything else. And it is going too deep, too fast. I have actually already put in that quote that you said into Twitter, so it's already out there on Twitter. But going too deep, too fast, or Chris says your product selection should be wide, your sourcing reps should be deep. You always need to be testing your products before you go and buy 50 or 100 units. But I've seen way too many people go out and say, oh, well, this one is a banger. Let's buy 50, let's buy 100. And then all of a sudden the price tanks. and they're losing money on every sale. And maybe they don't know it until that plum card is up for payment. And if nothing else, there are ways to make selling on Amazon an infinite game. It's just not losing money. So, and you do that, like, are you going to lose on some products? Yes, absolutely. But if you can make your bets asymmetric enough where you are winning more than you're losing and you're making up for those that do lose, you can turn this into an infinite game. And man, I heard a quote the other day. Uh, Shoot, it's a great quote, but if it's possible, it's inevitable. Like, it is possible to make a living on Amazon as long as you can stay in the game long enough. And matter of fact, I would say that if anybody stays in the game long enough and continues to learn, continues to put in the time, it's almost inevitable on the arbitrage side that you can make a fairly decent amount of money, at least a side income of some sort. But that, I think, is the biggest mistake that new sellers make. They get overzealous too quickly, and maybe they're ignoring Keepa and just going off of some friend shared a product, and they also shared it with 15 of their other friends. I think that's the absolute biggest mistake that I see people do.
Yeah, and it's impatience, in my opinion. You kind of see, you get stuck comparing. There's that great quote. That you should never compare someone's chapter 10 or chapter 20 to your chapter 2. You know, um, we tend to think that there's some magical revelation or epiphany that we're going to have that's going to unlock becoming $1 million seller. It's not. You'd be surprised, as I do this reverse sourcing and I look at these stores and whatnot, and it's really not as glamorous as you think it is, and that you may think that's a negative connotation to it, but it's really not. The fact that it's not as glamorous as you think it is means that it's closer than you think. It's far more attainable than you realize. I think new sellers kind of put it on a pedestal, and that's why they get impatient. It's kind of like, if you go into a batting cage, and you set it to 50-mile-per-hour softballs and you start ripping them, and you're hitting it on the sweet spot and you can barely feel it coming off the bat. That's great. That doesn't mean you're ready for major league pitching. You're not ready for a baseball coming at you at 95 miles per hour. You need to work yourself up, and you need to keep putting in the reps. So I think it's the impatience of the novice that gets people in trouble and kind of proliferates.
Mm-hmm. If we're not careful, this is going to just turn into how many quotes can we remember? But what you said reminded me of a really great Naval quote, which is impatience with action, patience with results. Yes, we do need to take action. That doesn't mean I need to go out and buy 100 units of the very first thing that's profitable. And we need to be patient with our results. Those results are going to compound over time. And the only way for us to stick around long enough for those efforts to compound is to make sure that we are playing a bit of an infinite game.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the buy box, the beautiful, the wonderful buy box. Everybody wants to win it more often. Here are the facts that we've uncovered on the buy box. Right, more stock equals better odds of getting and maintaining the buy box. And it makes a lot of sense when you look at it from Amazon's perspective. Amazon wants sellers who don't run out of inventory, because in-stock products are fulfilled to the customer consistently, and there are no outages. There's no delay getting these products into the customer's hands, which is a process that Amazon has perfected over time. Smart pricing beats low pricing. If you're sitting there and I mentioned the buy box and I would ask you, how do you win the buy box? If your first response or one of your first few responses is to lower your price, we need to have a little talk off air because that's the wrong way to go about it. It needs to be smart pricing. It's not just lowering it. You don't need to be the cheapest. Okay. The key to winning the buy box is to be competitive. We talked to we got to talk about smart repricer when we in our interview with Yoda, and that's actually a Three Colts originated product. That's not something that they acquired along the way, and it was cool because they're moving away from that penny under that it's almost a curse word. I feel guilty even saying that out loud, but we're moving away from those strategies. So it's interesting to see as we kind of learn more about the Amazon marketplace and the functioning that the marketplace has as it lives and breathes. It's interesting to see the innovation, and stuff like repricers and whatnot, kind of how we smarten up over time.
Yeah.
And then it's worth mentioning merchant fulfilled or FBM, fulfilled by merchant. Keep that in your back pocket. I shouldn't be the one saying this because I am an extreme novice at merchant fulfilled. I stayed away from it for as long as I possibly could. However, it's an important tactic. It can provide a little bit of insurance when it comes to your buy box share.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with, you don't have to be the cheapest. And Amazon is making it more and more clear how speed to the customer is really really what's more important than just being the cheapest. Yes, competitive, sure. You're not going to get the buy box even if you're, in a warehouse 5 miles from me, but you're $50 above the cheapest price. That's not going to be good for the customer. But if you're within a buck and you're also 5 miles away from me, like who's not gonna pay the extra buck to make sure that it's there the same day or tomorrow morning rather than have to wait 3 to 4 days for the item. So like we really need to think about this as sellers and why that is so important. And then the other thing is actually a friend of mine just messaged me, and now they're a big seller, and so they're a lot deeper on inventory than what a lot of arbitrage sellers are going to be, but they sent in a shipment and it went all to one location, and Amazon is splitting up their inventory across 77 fulfillment centers. Like that makes it very clear how much Amazon wants inventory to be distributed and how important that flywheel approach to inventory is to Amazon.
Yeah, I actually had I had Amazon. I was sourcing on my laptop, and I had a product pulled up, and but it was I had help coming over to do some eBay drafts for me, right? And
Mhm.
I let them work off my laptop. So in mid sourcing session, I handed my laptop over and I went over to my desktop computer, pulled up the same product, and within 30 seconds of looking at it, my desktop computer had a different buy box price than my laptop.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's a good example of how at least the efforts that Amazon is putting in to have, the buy box be as precise as possible, and it's based on delivery. And I've even seen, we talked about it before. There's even wording on the product detail pages now, where I think it was in the buy box where it says there may be a lower price, but this will be delivered to you faster, or something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah.
So, they're actually being pretty transparent with their motives.
Hmm. I'll tell you one thing that I like to do on occasion is I will go and take a look at products and then ask, 4 or 5 friends that I know are all over the country. Um,
Hmm.
if you've got that available, you should ask friends from different parts of the country, hey, can you send me a picture of the price of this product on Amazon? And it'll be very, very telling.
Hmm.
Um, all right, there's one of those things that people seem to obsess over. And we get this question probably at least twice a week because we do a live show on Sunday and on Wednesdays. But it's always about ROI. What ROI do I need? And I don't think that we should be obsessing over ROI as much as we do. Is it an important metric? Yes, absolutely. It helps us figure out, well, if I invest $1, how many dollars am I going to be able to spit out on the other side? And I mean, if we all had our own way, I mean, everything would be 1,000% ROI, and that's just what we look for. But that's not the way it works. And there's another thing, okay? Because we get to invest the same dollar over and over and over again. Now, I was thinking about this. Can you imagine going to some hedge fund manager or some real estate investor that buys commercial property and say, "Hey, yeah, I need to borrow some money, but I'm only going to be able to get a 20% ROI on that money, and I just need to borrow $1,000. I'm going to get you a 20% ROI." A hedge fund manager, a real estate investor, they're both going to be like, "You're going to get me a 20% return on my investment over the course of the next year?" They're like, "How much money can I give you?" And then you say, "Oh, no, I'm going to get you that 20% ROI every 45 days." I mean, talk about blowing someone's socks off. Well, that's what's possible with Amazon. And so we focus on these. I've got to get 30% ROI, immediately on my money. And it's very short term thinking. Does it make sense? Let's just say I could buy the same product over and over again. It cost me $1 and I can make 25 cents on it. But I can send in a couple hundred and it's just like an ATM machine, just keeps pumping out quarters for every dollar that I put in. Am I going to take that? Yeah, absolutely. I will absolutely take that. Now, if it's going to take a little bit longer, do I need to make a higher ROI? Yeah, because the time that cash is going to sit is going to be a little bit longer. But what really is more important is it's your inventory turn. How many times per year can you turn over your inventory? And I think it really should be, depending on what model you choose, but in arbitrage, I think you should be able to have an inventory turn rate of 5 or 6 times a year, where a lot of stores like a Target, a Walmart, they're looking for 3 to 4 times per year. You get it to 5 or 6, and you're going to absolutely crush, even if you're willing to take a 10 or a 15 or even a 20% ROI. Gone are the days where we've got to make a minimum 30% ROI, $3 profit on items. It's just the market has matured past that, I think.
Yeah, I think the mindset shift that would be the most beneficial for people that obsess over ROI is, okay, if you want to hone in, if you want to focus on ROI, think of it look at ROI as from your catalog as a whole.
Hmm.
I think we obsess over it on a product level, and we get too specific with it, because there's going to be an average. You know, if you have not 10 products in your catalog and 9 of them are plugging away, getting you 25% ROI, and you're turning it over on a regular basis, and those are going great, but you have one that was supposed to be 50%, but it's got a bit of a higher return rate, or and you focus in on that, you're kind of missing the forest for the trees, right? You have that one ASIN, that a couple returns and my 50% turned into 10. That's only dragging your overall average down into the low 20% from a catalog perspective. I think we need to kind of think about our long-term averages, in a full year scope and from a catalog scope. Instead, I think that's where we run into trouble is we get so wound up in one, and I think we talk in terms of the dollars that we spent on the purchase, right? It's like, I bought $1,000 worth of this product. I need, this should be a 20% ROI. I should get $1,200 back. But then you throw a return in, something else happens, blah, 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 and you end up losing money. So you're like, oh, that $1,000 is only 975. I actually lost money. And you get so angry about it. If you look at it over the course of a year, if you buy $1,000 6 times over the course of the year and you turn it over every 60 days, your long-term ROI is probably going to be much closer to that 20%. You throw in, some returns and whatnot, some mishaps, maybe it ends up being 15%. That's a positive number, but if you obsess over this one batch that you bought, and the ROI associated to that, you're kind of missing the big picture, and you're going to end up feeling bad about something that you really don't need to be feeling bad about, if that makes sense.
That is a really good way to think about it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of calling things infinite money glitches, but if you can, I mean, this might be one of the closest scenarios where this kind of is an infinite money glitch. If, let's say, for example, that you can invest $10,000 a month, and on average, you get a 15% ROI on average. That means you're going to be pumping out $1,500 of profit every single month, or $1,500, a return on that $10,000 investment. Plus, you're going to get your pool of money back. And you can just, that you can do that every single month. I mean, then it just becomes a math problem. Well, how many times can I invest $10,000, or how much can I get? Can I take that 10,000 and can I, start investing 50 or 100,000 every single month? And yeah, the math has to be perfect and stuff like that, but on average, you get that 12 or 15% ROI, and now instead of investing 10,000 a month, you're investing 100,000 a month, and now you're throwing off 15,000 in returns off of your investment. It really just becomes a math equation as to how much you want to make. And yes, there are going to be headaches. There's going to be inventory to deal with. There's going to be account health issues, et cetera, and so on. But how many other, I don't know. There's not a lot of other places that you can do that on. You own a lawn mowing business. Yeah, you can say, okay, well, I need to mow this many lawns to, make X amount of dollars. But after that, the difficulty of scaling is hiring the next person to do more lawns. Whereas with Amazon, I just have to deploy more capital, and I could grow a 2 million, a 5 million, a $7 million a year business just sitting behind a keyboard in a dark room.
Yep, exactly. And you want to go on with the lawn mowing thing, right? When you're starting out with the lawn mowing business, you're not going to turn down the short lawns. You're not going to, the short lawns being the 25% ROI products. You just need to get them in, you need to get them mowed, you need to get them paid, get paid for it. That's it. You can't go into becoming a landscaper and go, I am only doing palatial estates. It's just not going to work.
Yep.
So, speaking of not obsessing over ROI and how that relates to the bottom line in the long run, let's talk about the free money that's available. And I'm talking specifically about the power of gift cards and cash back. This is free money. This is the invisible alligators floating in your moat, protecting your castle. This is something that we need to. Maybe I'm just talking for myself right now. Like, I need to constantly keep this on the front burner, right? Because it needs to be done every time to full effect, because it's important. It's protection. It's a bit of a force field around the capital that you're spending on these purchases. Could you think about it? The combination of discounted gift cards plus the cashback portals, that's how you build margin, right? We referenced the price tankers. That some of the price tankers don't think they're price tankers. There are sellers out there who are fine with a 0% ROI because they're making money on the volume that they're turning over and just taking the cash back. There are people that cash back, once you hit a certain level, becomes so significant that some sellers determine that that's enough of a windfall that their business is successful just based on that alone. People make car payments, people make house payments, simply off some of these cash back numbers. And usually around once a quarter, if you're paying attention to social media, you'll get some pretty impressive numbers on snapshots from the cash back that is headed into these accounts. But that's how you build margin. We talk about manufacturing margin. That's the place that you can build a little bit extra to where you can absorb some negative effects with your inventory, and specifically the pricing on your inventory as it's live on the marketplace. Put more simply, don't leave money on the table. If you're not using cash back, you're at a disadvantage against your competition. Everyone else on that listing. You need to think long term, right? And again, zoom out, to a more, like a year long, zoom out to the full calendar view, and think about the compounding effect that the savings will have. It was late last night and I wanted to get more inventory on the sheet and get it en route to the prep center. I just wanted I wanted more on the books, but it was getting late. It was one of those situations, where I'd kind of wasted too much time and but the eyelids were getting heavy and it's like, oh shit, I better get, let's get something in, make myself feel better this morning when I woke up. And I slammed on the brakes because I nearly completed a purchase. Well, I'll tell you what, it was Sephora, right? And my opinion of Sephora, I don't know. It's not as rosy as it once was, right? But and I'm kind of, maybe I'm not thinking clearly, and I'm just kind of going in. I'm trying to do it real quick, and I got stuff on my mind, and it's like, okay, I was going to grab this, and I'm like, look, Sephora, I need to get in and out quickly because it's it seems to tank, and I'm not a huge fan, but it'll get something on the books. It'll get units in the catalog. And I almost cashed out. I almost checked out, but I pumped the brakes at the last minute. And I said, you know what? I need to go look at the gift card. It added time to it, to the overall transaction, and I was tired already. But sure enough, I look, and at the time, one of the gift card repositories that I use had 11%, 11.5% off. Yeah. I mean, it would have been idiotic to just simply bypass that, right? Because Sephora, I have no problem ordering Sephora. I have the rewards, so I was using points and stuff. But that's how I tried to justify it. It's like, well, I'll cash in 500 points. That'll take $10 off, and I was half-assing my moat, But luckily, I had the presence of mind to reduce my buy cost by another 11% because I took the time to look at the gift card, And then on top of that, I think top cash back was 5% on the overall purchase. So
that's great.
think about it, half-ass. Think about how much half-assing would have cost me. You know, even on a $200 purchase, you know, I mean, I would have left upwards of $30 on the table, and that can't be done. That's not a long-term successful strategy to miss out on stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I'll say I think cash back. I like miles. You know, I like to be able. I want to be able to take the family on vacation for free. But cash back is incredible. Whether you're doing it through credit cards or you're doing it through cashback portals, and we're going to be talking a little bit about outliers here. But I've got a buddy. He made like 25 grand in cash back in 1 month during Q4. If that doesn't pay the mortgage and take care of Christmas and help with the credit card bills come January, I don't know what does. And imagine as you do scale and you start buying, let's say, $5,000 worth of gift cards at a time, and maybe you're using a credit card with 5% cash back when you spend over 5 grand. And then you're going to stack a cashback portal on top of that, and you can really start seeing some things take off and make that extra money. And then you'll need to talk to your accountant about this, but most people take their cash back to a personal account and it becomes tax-free income. Again, we're not the IRS and we're not a CPA, so don't take anything we say as tax advice. But that's the fairly common thing to do. And heck, even if you could just make a car payment with your monthly cash back, like that's
Right.
got to, the average monthly car payment in the US right now is like $750 for a new car. But it's enough to keep me from buying a new car. However, if I knew a place or two that I could spend X amount of dollars and I get $750 cash every single month, it might make it a little easier to pull that trigger. All right, let's touch on another piece of account health, which is how to survive an Amazon suspension or a Section 3, because everyone is worried about those at all times, but even more so now, it seems. So the very first piece of advice, which this is something that people don't necessarily like to hear, but it's something that I think people need to hear, is that if something happens account health wise, you need to stay calm. I see way too many people who their very first thing is Amazon suspended me for no reason. I can't believe this. I'm furious. I'm pissed, all the things. And it's all emotionally driven. I understand. This is something that you've worked on. It's something that you've built. It is important to you. I get it. However, when we respond from an emotional standpoint, it doesn't usually end well. We're not making the clearest headed decisions and things like that. Secondly, we want to move fast, but we don't want to break things necessarily. Okay. Don't half ass your submission just because you want to get it in an hour after you get the first letter. Be okay taking 24 or even 48 hours to get everything right. That first response, in my opinion, is going to kind of set a tone. And if it's ugly and haphazard and just, slapped together, I'm not sure that you're putting your best foot forward. And, I know, it's just some faceless, nameless person on the other end of a computer looking at it. But if you were in their position, would you want to see a mess, a jumble of paperwork? I don't think so. And you got to know that they're talking to each other around the water cooler or they're leaving notes in Slack channels to each other. Oh man, Grant is throwing in another response to his suspension. What's this clown going to do this time? Like, I don't want those kind of conversations going around the water cooler at Amazon. Make sure that you're ready at all times. Chris talked about this earlier. Keep records like a lawyer. Make sure that your documentation is in order. And I'm not saying everything needs to be printed out and put into a file and things like that. But have some sort of system that makes it pretty easy to figure out where things are, even if that system is filing to folders in Gmail. Like, that is okay too. And then finally, don't be too proud to call in a professional. uh you know I will hear quite often that, man, I don't want to spend the $2,000 is too expensive to get help with my Amazon suspension. But even if you're only making 25 or $250 in profit per month, let's just say that's all you're making. You make enough to, I don't know, $250 a month is maybe enough for a used car payment, whatever it is. That's 10 months of profit that you may spend to get your account back, but it's an account that you may have for the next 100 months. So does the investment make sense for the amount of cash that you plan on pulling out of this business? Well, my opinion is yes, it does. Now, there are also ways to make that a little bit easier. You could get a seller basics plan for $99 a month and kind of have them on call. You could stack that cash in a bank account and say, "This is my oh shit fund," and just be ready for it. But one of the things I tell people quite frequently, probably like once a month, is it's probably worth the money to get some help if you're not getting any headway yourself. Someone who has a track record of beating these things, and over the course of a year, that investment makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's essentially the insurance policy that you'll probably end up having to use. I think most insurance policies, that will run its course without ever using it, like a car insurance, and knock on wood, but accidents and most people have very few claims on these policies that they pay for. Paying a retainer, a monthly retainer of $99 to something like Seller Basics, you can do that, which is a modest investment, but you're doing that in an environment where a whole lot of people around you are having things occur to their accounts where something like that would come in handy. There's proof of needing to exercise that insurance policy all around us. So as far as usefulness, if you're anti-insurance or whatnot, or you resent the fact that you have to pay for something that you don't end up using, it's not quite apples to apples in that scenario. So let's this is a little more of kind of like an intermediate topic. If you're a newer seller, be careful with this next section, because we're going to talk about selling higher risk products, and the opportunity that those have. I've never heard. Have you ever heard anybody? If you ask the question, if you took a poll of people and asked what their favorite flavor of ice cream is, the amount of people that would say Neapolitan, it is probably zero, right? Like, and I only bring that up because we're talking about being vanilla, right? No one's favorite ice cream is Neapolitan, except for the one or two people that are about to be in the YouTube comments. But the vast majority, no one's favorite is Neapolitan. But that's the flavor that we get for parties, right? You get a birthday party and it's like, well, just get the Neapolitan because you're spreading it out. You're trying to cover as many bases as possible. That's kind of how I look at these kind of fringe items and the advantages. The beginners, and I singled out beginners before I even started this because you guys want to be vanilla. Just get the vanilla ice cream. Just go about it. Enjoy the vanilla and put the earmuffs on for a little bit. But as far as like spreading out a little bit, we talk, and a good example, a better example than ice cream would be retail arbitrage, and where you find the profitable products when you're doing RA. The best products are often in the dusty, dark corners, right? All of the traffic is going to be in the clearance aisle. The people who take the effort to go into the other aisles and go into the corners and go all the way down the aisle, they're going to find winning products and with minimal competition. And that is a microcosm of this section that I want to talk about. Lowering your competition often increases your margins. They're often higher. Right off the bat, I think probably the most obvious would be hazmat. I know there's an issue. It can take quite a long time to get approved. But if you're approved for hazmat and you're not taking full advantage of it, you are leaving money on the table. I am absolutely convinced of that because the competition's lower, right? It's shipping costs, again, sensitive subject right now. Costs are elevated. Hazmat requires shipping to a designated fulfillment center, and there are only a handful around the country as far as Amazon shipping plans. That is an increased cost. However, that can often be overcome because a lot of sellers aren't going to go to the trouble, right? So you've now reduced your competition by being open to hazmat products. And if you know the rules, you can print money. Once you understand a concept like that, and you can perfect and reduce the extra cost as much as possible when it comes to something like hazmat. Or another good example is products with no ranking, right?
Mm-hmm.
People a lot of times, are very, as far as sales rank, that's another very vanilla topic. They have these overly strict requirements of what their sales rank needs to be. And there are a ton of sellers out there that see the fact that it's not ranked, and they're going to go right by it. They're not even going to bother to scroll down and see the seller count on the Keepa graph is moving up and down like an EKG. It's clearly selling. I've seen products with no rank, but still have the 100+ sold over the last 30-day badge.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's I got to wipe the drool when I see that scenario, because I know the competition is going to be limited. That's such a great opportunity. I can't help but lick my chops over something like that. So those are the smart risks, and maybe calling it a risk is maybe a bit dramatic. But for the sake of the example, there are certain sellers, the vanilla sellers, are going to think it's too risky. So in that sense, it really is a risk. And if you can look for those smart risks like that, there's a lot of money in it.
Yeah. I had to look it up. No sales rank with the 100+ sold or more badge per month. 86,869 ASINs on Amazon.
I'm the odds of whether I'm about to run that KPF search, the odds have been taken off the board at Vegas as soon as I get off here.
So the next thing is how do you stay ahead of Amazon's rules? Because the only constant is, well, it's death, taxes, and Amazon changing a rule or 5 that we need to deal with. So a couple of things, and this goes back to us talking about going wide. You need to stay flexible. We've got some issues right now on the Amazon platform. Vans is getting taken away, so Vans is going to get taken off the table. We're still in the middle of all the Estee Lauder brands being pulled off the table, and with Vans coming off the table, is it very likely that the other brands that company owns, like Columbia or some of their other brands, it's like 7 or 8, do they also get pulled off the table in the future? It's very possible. Okay. So we need the ability to stay flexible. All right. And you never know what is right around the corner, other than there is likely going to be some change. And the nice thing about being a small business owner is we are typically a lot more agile than the Amazons and the Apples of the world. But how do you stay on top of all this? It seems like it's a full-time job in and of itself. Well, you can outsource that. And that's why Chris and I do this. It's why we do a live show every Wednesday, every Sunday. We share these rule changes as they happen. We answer questions and we give, feedback and thoughts on that kind of stuff. Follow the right people on social media. I'm a big fan of Twitter. Twitter is a very fast moving, text based social media. So it's easy to, at least for the way that I take in information, it's the easiest for me to take in a lot of information in a short period of time. But there is YouTube, there's Facebook groups, there's Discord groups. Find the right group and hang out there. Hang out in the right, uh, following the right social media channels, because you're going to be able to find out pretty quickly what is changing and when it changes and things like that. And then never rely on just one method, because you never know when something is going to get taken away. And what I mean by this is like sourcing methods. If you come across a method of sourcing that's working really well for you, like storefront stalking, for example. I hate to say this, but we are just Amazon just flipping one switch and taking storefront stalking away by turning off storefront view of sellers. That'd be all that would take, you know? So then you need to know how to source manually or source with the software or whatever it is. Okay. So always have several arrows in your quiver, and make sure that you're trying to find the signal through the noise, which is tough because there's a lot of noise.
Yeah, somebody described the CEO. A CEO is essentially just a problem solver. I don't remember who said it, but there is so much truth in that. This gets down to reminding ourselves that we are business owners. You need to. It's much easier said than done. I acknowledge that, but the emotion needs to be taken out of the business. And it's very easy to get upset about this, or about something that would happen, or the problem is the changes like this, like when Vans is taken away, and then you kind of connect the dots, and it's like, well, that means Columbia is probably gone soon, and you go down the list of the other businesses in the corporate chart, the corporate branches. And it's easy to let it feel like the walls are closing in. But that's the emotion, because Chris and I will sit there and say, if somebody on the live show is like, oh, Vans is gone, that's it. Arbitrage is dead. We see it with every beauty brand that gets taken away. No one's talking about the brands that are coming onto the catalog. Maybe you had a sweet spot, a little honey hole for some Vans shoes, but relatively new to the scene is Hoka and On, running. A lot of the running brands have become more popular now. You'd look funny at somebody wearing Brooks, several years ago, but now they're becoming. I know that my wife's a registered nurse, and a lot of those nurses have discovered how comfortable Brooks are for a 12-hour shift and whatnot. So the the consumer tastes are going to change all the time. So but we're not going to sit there and nobody sits there and goes, hey, I had never heard of Reef sandals before, but like, you're not going to sit there and just smile and go, hey, I got a new brand. You don't sit there and feel happy about discovering something new. But when something's taken away, it's too easy to think the sky's falling. So
Yeah.
and that's the emotional part of it, and the reminding yourself that it's a business. Think about other businesses. Think about every brick and mortar general manager right now, every quarter when the numbers come out about how many more people are shopping online. you know you think there aren't brick and mortar general managers out there losing sleep? There has to be. There's going to be bad news all the time. There's going to be trends that move against you or against your business's best interests. Doesn't mean you don't open up the doors each day at Duluth or whatever brick and mortar store that you happen to run. They're going to open the doors regardless, and they're going to keep on conducting business.
So I had to look this up while you brought up the shoe example, and dude, you're not going to believe. So I just went to Perplexity and I said, what are the fastest growing shoe brands in 2025? Because you brought up, I think, was it Saucony that you brought up? Yeah. The number one fastest growing shoe brand in 2025 looks to be go by the name of Anta. It's a Chinese sportswear brand that Kyrie Irving has his signature shoe at. Saucony, number 2, Asics, number 3, On, number 4, number 5, Aloha's. Never heard of it. You know what's missing from this? Nike, Adidas, Puma, Reebok, all those kind of mainstays that we've been used to for the past 30 years. And so, yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah. And just it just proving the point, it's the Anta, Kyrie, I think that was, oh boy, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Splash Brothers and Golden State just got traded to Dallas.
Luka?
No,
not Luka. Sorry, got traded to Dallas.
Yeah, he was the right hand man for Steph Curry. Oh, people watching right now will be like, look at these nerds.
I know.
But anyway, the big time. I think he always had weird looking shoes. I remember watching. I think those might have been Antas too. But that just shows you, like the connectivity. The world's getting a little bit smaller. In these worldwide brands, because I believe On is Northern Europe. Aren't they out of one of the? They
I think
like
so.
Sweden or Norway or something like that. So, yeah, it's interesting. The mainstays, but still, think about the volume done on those traditional brands too. So, if those are the most popular, think about the volume that we're completely missing out on by not considering Saucony or some of these other what we think are lesser known brands. So,
yeah.
All of this to say, Amazon, selling on Amazon is, in my opinion, still the best business model. It's such a great opportunity. And that's that might get the keyboard warriors fired up in the comments. But again, if you take the emotion out of it, if you look at what Amazon is, take a step back. I mean, it's tough to see, once you get wrapped up in the minutia, of actually running your store. If you take a step back and look at what Amazon is, how incredible this marketplace is, that's been built, the traffic that it sees, how many billions of views did Amazon receive just over the month of December for Q4? I mean, that was billions with a B, right? The Walmart, the upstart Walmart, you would think, they're a massive company. Amazon just lapped them as far as like total revenue recently. Amazon, of course, doesn't have the benefit of the brick and mortar, the massive brick and mortar footprint that Walmart does. But as big as Walmart is, total revenue, they're neck and neck. From an e-commerce standpoint, they're, what are they, a tenth of what Amazon does? I mean, they're still at the kitty table.
1/40th right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gave them too much credit. 1/40th, right? That's barely that's not even the kids' table. They're still sitting in a high chair. So it's the traffic alone, like the opportunity of how many eyeballs come across our products. It's really cool if you go to the payments page on Seller Central. they have a beta feature at the top of it to where they actually have AI analyze your store, and it runs some comparisons. It'll give you a year-to-year comparison of the previous month versus the February of 24. Kind of gives you a little bit of insight. It's pretty neat. You can check it out. But usually every time I look at that page, and it's only been a handful of times, but it will tell you your impressions, and just my store alone. I'm not a big seller. But it was hundreds of thousands of views over. I don't remember what the period of time was, but just my store, 700,000 impressions, or I mean, that's mind-boggling to me, to be able to get that sort of exposure with my modest store. It is a good example of the power and the size, the incredible size of the Amazon marketplace. And not only traffic, the traffic comes because of the trust, and the overall consumer opinion of Amazon. It's not that, it wasn't that long ago where stores were so pissed off because people would walk into their brick and mortar store and they'd see a product that they liked, they wanted to buy, and they'd be checking on their smartphone, see what it goes for on Amazon. And most of the time, Amazon was cheaper, right? So the store, I remember a whole bunch of articles when that started becoming obvious that that's what consumers were doing. The brick and mortar management people were going nuts. They're pulling their hair out over that. But that's the reputation. Don't think because you happen to be disgruntled as a seller, that's not the prevailing opinion of Amazon as a whole. There's wealth resentment and whatnot. Like there's a contingent that's going to hate big business, and with the economic boycott or whatever that was that they tried to do that had zero impact. That's going to be there. But we're talking about John Q. Public, the person that just loves the fact that they can set a subscribe and save and get these household goods delivered right to their doorstep in an incredibly short period of time. Like let's not kid ourselves and think that Amazon is spiraling down the drain. And with that, remembering the traffic, remembering the opportunity, the size, that creates, the scale of Amazon is transferable to the scale of your store. You can ride those coattails to some serious dollars. You start with a couple products that people, I'm not making fun of you when I say vanilla, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're doing what you're supposed to do as a beginner, but that vanilla is going to turn into Neapolitan and whatever. It's going to turn into some weird Ben and Jerry's by the time you're done, riding the coattails of the Amazon marketplace. It's it's not passive income, right? I won't call it passive income. Nate McAllister had the correct term a long time ago. He said it's residual income. The work is done at one point, and then the residuals come over the long tail over a longer period of time, which is pretty close. It's close enough to passive income for me. But once you get that dialed in, you're making money while you sleep, and that's the one thing. That was what we love about the concept of passive income. That's attainable. With once you get things dialed in, once you get your store, once you get your sourcing, once you take all of these best practices and lock them into place, you can make some serious money and go take a nap.
I agree with you. I think that Amazon really still is one of the best business models to get into. Sure, we could argue, well, you don't need any capital to open a TikTok shop or anything like that. Yeah, but go look up network effects and how long that opportunity is really going to be around. You talked about the massive traffic and the built-in demand. It's traffic that's still going up. People are still moving to buying online from buying in traditional brick and mortar. And I was thinking about this. I remember I used to work in a town called Westerville, Ohio. It's about 38,000 people is the population. And Walmart decided that they wanted to move into Westerville. And for years and years, city of Westerville said, no, we don't want you. No, you can't come here. And then finally, Walmart kept coming back to the table and they talked Westerville into letting them into the town. Didn't really seem to hurt the other businesses that were there. They didn't have any mom and pop grocery stores. They were, they were Meijer and Kroger in that town. So they put in a Walmart. And here's what Walmart was willing to do to open up a brick and mortar distribution channel to 38,000 people that already had 3 other stores in the area. They were willing to totally forego their normal store look, the gray and the blue, and instead they became a tenant in a strip center, and they remodeled the entire strip center for the owner of the strip center into Westerville's standards, which means brick facade and all of that stuff. And they had to go through all these licensing permits and procedures, and city of Westerville had to be there to make sure everything was just right and up to their standards to be able to get a portion of 40,000 people. And you and I can click a couple of buttons and we can get access to 1 billion views per month. Now, are we going to get access to all of those? No, of course not. But that is the total pool that we get to jump into just for clicking some buttons and buying something on clearance over at that Walmart and sending it off to Amazon. If you think about it, it's kind of insane.
Yeah, absolutely. It's put that into perspective next time you sit there and go, oh, it's already got 12 FBA offers on it.
Right.
Think about that story.
Yeah. So we always like to close the show with a quote of the week. And this week it comes from Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. But opportunities multiply as they are seized. Success on Amazon, success in any business really is about taking action. Impatience with action, patience with results. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for the sun to be in the house of the 7th moon or anything like that. You don't need the perfect product. You don't need the perfect ROI. Action also helps you beat back anxiety, gives us opportunities to learn. And when it's done properly and you take asymmetric bets, you should come out on the other end profitable, or at least playing an infinite game. So hopefully you enjoyed these tips. I think we said we were going to do 17. I think there are actually 18 in there. But hopefully those are helpful to you in some way. And until next show, we'll see you. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.